All right, let's jump right in. Today we're going to be covering like finance, tech, global events, even a little bit of holiday stuff.
Wow, that's a lot of ground to cover.
Yeah, it's that end of year kind of vibe where everything's happening at once.
True.
You sent over this daily AI news digest, and let me tell you, it is extensive.
AI never sleeps, right?
No kidding. So, for our listeners out there, get ready because we're about to distill all of this down to the absolute need to know stuff.
Cut through that noise.
Exactly. We're talking about those surprising bits of information, those insights that connect the dots, and maybe even spark a new interest or two for ya along the way.
I love that. Always up for sparking some curiosity.
Okay, so first up, let's zoom in on what's happening with the economy right now. I mean, anyone thinking about buying a house lately has probably noticed things are getting a bit pricier.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Those mortgage rates, they just keep climbing.
Yeah, seriously, they just hit 6.85%. That's like the highest we've seen since July.
It's the second week in a row we've had an increase. It's all tied to, those bond yields going up.
Right, right. And the Fed's kind of trying to walk this tightrope with inflation, right?
Exactly. The Federal Reserve, they're trying to keep things under control, but it's having this, ripple effect on mortgage rates.
So basically, higher mortgage rates mean it costs more to borrow money for a house.
Make it tougher for those first-time buyers, especially.
Absolutely. But here's where things get kind of like head scratching, right? We've got the job market sending out these mixed signals. I mean, November had pretty strong job growth, but then we're also seeing more people filing for unemployment.
It's a bit of a paradox, isn't it? The economy's not exactly booming, but the job market's kind of hanging in there. More resilient than some people thought.
So it's like one of those wait and see situations, huh? What are some things like, we should be paying attention to in the next few months to try and get a better read on where things are headed?
Well, inflation is definitely the big one, right? If it keeps falling, the Fed might chill out a bit on those interest rate hikes. That could give the housing market some breathing room and maybe even help out with job growth.
Okay, so inflation, check. Anything else?
Keep an eye on how much people are spending. If everyone's suddenly tightening their belts because prices are up or they're worried about losing their jobs, well, that could be a sign that the economy's slowing down.
So inflation, spending, what about like anything happening globally? Does that factor in?
Oh, for sure. Things like, geopolitical stuff,
Hmm.
major disruptions to the supply chain, any kind of global instability can definitely have a ripple effect on the U.S. economy.
Okay, got it. Inflation, spending, global stuff, lots to keep an eye on.
Absolutely.
So enough about the economy for now. Let's dive into the tech world, which, as always, is moving at like a million miles an hour. And speaking of speed, Apple is on the verge of hitting a, wait for it, $4 trillion market cap
Brilliant.
with a T. It's kind of mind-blowing.
Seriously. And it seems like their big push into AI is really paying off for them.
Yeah, they've got all these new iPhone features coming out. There's talk about them integrating with ChatGPT. Even AI-generated emojis are a thing now.
Right. It's like AI is suddenly everywhere you look.
It kind of is. And speaking of AI and the financial world, there's a bit of a stir over at Dogecoin, the
Yeah.
cryptocurrency.
Well, what's going on there?
Well, their leaders are calling for the elimination of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the CFPB.
Whoa. The CFPB. That's a pretty bold move. I mean, they've been pretty active lately, especially with that new rule about overdraft fees, right?
Right. And I guess the folks over at Dogecoin see that as the CFPB like overstepping their boundaries a bit.
Interesting. So it kind of feeds into that whole debate about how much regulation is too much, right?
Exactly. On the one hand, you want to encourage innovation and let things move quickly, but then you also got to make sure that consumers are protected.
Right. It's all about finding that sweet spot, right? That balance between progress and protect.
Yeah, for sure. And it makes you wonder about the bigger picture, too. Like, okay, Apple's going all in on AI, which is super impressive from a tech standpoint. But is it actually a game changer, or is it too early to say?
Yeah, I mean, the tech world is always changing so fast. What's revolutionary today might be old news tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
We got to see how these new features actually work for people in their everyday lives.
Right. It's easy to get caught up in the hype.
Definitely. Let's see if they really deliver on those promises.
Okay, so we've talked about the economy. We've touched on the fast-paced world of tech. Now let's shift gears and head over to the global stage where things, well, they're getting a bit tense. President-elect Trump is making some waves with his demand to retake control of the Panama Canal.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a pretty big deal.
It is. He's claiming that Panama is overcharging American ships and that there are, like, Chinese soldiers involved in running the canal.
Wow, that's a serious accusation.
It is. And of course, Panama is pushing back hard, saying, the canal is theirs and they're running it according to international treaties.
They're basically saying, hands off our canal.
Pretty much. They insist that the toll rates are transparent and apply to everyone equally.
And on the Chinese soldier thing, they're saying there's absolutely no truth to that.
Right, but there is this Hong Kong-based company that manages ports at the entrance to the canal. And that sparks some concerns about, data security and stuff.
I see, so it's not quite as clear-cut as it might seem at first glance.
Yeah, it's all very nuanced and complex. It makes you
Mhm.
wonder, right? Is this a legitimate attempt to regain control of the canal, or is it more of a power play, a way for Trump to assert his dominance on the world stage?
That's the million-dollar question. It's possible that this is all part of a bigger strategy, maybe even a bargaining chip in some larger negotiation.
It's like a high-stakes game of geopolitical chess.
Totally. And unfortunately, the Panama Canal isn't the only international incident causing a stir right now. There's also that plane crash in Kazakhstan that's got everyone wondering about Russia's involvement.
Yeah, that's a tragic situation. Yeah, it's just awful. What have we learned about the crash so far?
Well, at first, people were saying it was a bird strike, you know?
Right, I think I saw that in the news.
Yeah, but it seems like more recent evidence is suggesting that maybe it was accidentally hit by a Russian anti-aircraft system.
Like they mistook it for something else?
Yeah, potentially. And, with all the tension going on with the Ukraine and everything, there were reports of GPS jamming in that area.
So, the plane might have been off course?
Possibly, yeah. And if they couldn't properly identify it, well, it's a tragic mistake.
It really is, especially considering the timing with, those Ukrainian drone incidents happening in southern Russia recently.
It just adds another layer of complexity to this already super tense situation.
Absolutely. And then on top of all that, you've got Finland seizing this Russian-linked ship because they think it damaged that undersea power cable.
Yeah, the one that connects Finland and Estonia, right?
Uh-huh. And it's like, this isn't even the first time something like this has happened.
It's starting to feel like a pattern, isn't it? Targeting critical infrastructure like that?
Yeah, especially with all the geopolitical stuff going on, it's definitely unsettling. So, with the plane crash and the cable incident, what kind of impact do you think this could have, on international relations? Could it escalate things even more?
It's definitely a risk.
Yeah.
I mean, it just highlights how fragile things are right now. One wrong move, one misunderstanding, and things could spiral pretty quickly.
It's almost like everyone's on edge.
It does feel that way sometimes. And I think it's starting to impact how people engage with news, especially political news.
Oh, interesting. You mean, people are tuning out?
It seems that way, yeah.
Yeah.
There's this whole thing about political news fatigue.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that.
Yeah.
People just can't handle the constant stream of, negativity, right?
Exactly. It's just too much for some people to process, especially with everything else going on in their lives.
I can definitely see that. But, ignoring it completely isn't the answer either, is it?
You're right. We need to stay informed. It's important, especially if we want to, be engaged citizens and participate in the process.
So how do we find that balance? How do we stay informed without letting it, totally drain us?
Well, I think it starts with being more mindful of, how we consume news. Instead of just passively scrolling through headlines all day, maybe we need to be more deliberate,
More intentional about where we get our news from.
Yeah, and what perspectives we're seeking out. Even just limiting how much time we spend consuming news can help.
Okay, so it's not just about, how much news we consume, but also the type of news.
Yeah, and maybe even more importantly, shifting our focus. Instead of getting sucked into the constant drama of the 24-hour news cycle, what if we focused more on the bigger picture?
You mean, the long-term implications of things?
Right, exactly. The things that are actually going to shape our future, not just the day-to-day political battles.
Yeah, that makes sense. Focus on the issues that matter most, the things that actually affect our lives.
It's about getting involved in a way that feels, empowering, not just exhausting.
That's a good point. And you know what? It's actually really encouraging to see that even with all the political stuff going on, there are still some positive things happening. Did you hear about those bills that President Biden signed on Christmas Eve?
Oh, yeah, 50 of them.
Uh-huh. Including some pretty impactful ones, too.
Yeah, there's that Stop Institutional Child Abuse Act.
Oh, yeah, that's the one that, Paris Hilton was championing, right?
Yep, Paris Hilton. Not who you'd expect to be leading the charge on something like that, right?
No, not at all. But you know what? Good for her for using her platform to raise awareness about such an important issue.
Absolutely. It shows that, like, anyone can make a difference, no matter their background.
And then there was that other bill, the one that finally made the bald eagle the official national bird of the United States.
I thought that was already the case.
Me too. I mean, it's been a symbol of America forever, right?
Since 1782.
I guess. Better late than never.
I guess so. But
Mm,
yeah,
yeah.
it's nice to see it finally official.
And there were a bunch of other important bills, too, right? Like protecting Native American children, tackling hazing on college campuses, even strengthening those anti-corruption measures.
Yeah, it's good to see that even amidst all the chaos, some positive stuff is getting done.
It is. It kind of gives you hope, you know? Like, even when things seem bleak, there are still people out there fighting for what's right and making a difference in the world.
Yeah, it's important to remember that.
It really is. So we've covered a ton of ground in this deep dive. We've talked about the economy, AI, global events, and even a little bit of holiday cheer. We started with the economy, then jumped into tech and AI, explored some global happenings, and even found a few heartwarming stories along the way.
Yeah, we've been all over the place. It's amazing how much news there is every single day.
Seriously. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm curious, what story from today really stuck with you?
I keep thinking about that whole political news fatigue thing we discussed.
Yeah, it's kind of concerning, right? Like two-thirds of Americans feeling burnt out on it.
It is. Makes you wonder, how do we make staying informed feel less, well, exhausting?
Right. I mean, we talked about being more mindful of where we get our news from, how much time we spend consuming it, all that stuff.
But it also feels like maybe the people sharing the news have a role to play too, right?
Oh, totally. Like, how can we present this information in a way that's engaging and informative, but doesn't just add to that sense of negativity?
Exactly. It's got to be a two-way street. We need better news, and we need to be better news consumers.
Well said. And now I want to turn the question to our listeners out there. What story from today made you want to learn more?
What sparked your curiosity? Was it the potential of AI? The global economy?
Hmm.
Maybe even something as simple as a Boxing Day tradition?
Whatever it was, hold on to that feeling. Let it inspire you to do your own deep dives, explore the topics that fascinate you.
Staying informed doesn't have to be a chore. It's about finding those nuggets of knowledge that resonate with you, the things that make you think differently or see the world in a new way.
It's about making those unexpected connections. Like, who would have thought Paris Hilton would be advocating for child protection, or that the bald eagle wasn't already officially the national bird?
The world is full of surprises. Just got to keep asking those questions and never stop exploring.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So, until next time, stay curious out there, deep divers.